Hello everyone, my name is Bhante Wade Buripano. I'm here at Empty Cloud Monastery for this evening's monk chat. Bhante Sudaso may be joining me partway through the evening, but for now it'll be me solo, and I'll do the best that I can to answer whatever questions you send in. Of course, for monk chat, as I think most of you know, there is no set program, except that you can send in questions about Buddhism, anything related to Buddhism, and we do our best to try to answer. And we go until about we can go up till 9:30. So 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time in the U.S. So it's about an hour and a half total, and so we have plenty of time to stretch out and answer a lot of questions. So don't hesitate to send in any questions you may have on the topic of Buddhism. And let's see, I'll take a look at, I'm getting a message here. We're still having trouble with Facebook. Apparently, we're having trouble streaming to Facebook. And so apologies to anyone who may be trying to watch this on Facebook. And we're getting a number of hellos coming in. I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see better. Sign of aging. I'm having to wear glasses now. Frequent recollection, of course, in Buddhism that we are subject to aging, and here it is. Okay. Scott and Gita, Lydia, Lilani, Norma, Maria, Richard, Norma, Kim, Jody, John, and Richard. Welcome to everyone, and Richard actually has a question as well, in addition to greetings, and so let me bring that up on the screen. We've got Olga as well, saying hello, and Yong. Oh, I missed. The questions and hellos are coming in. And Richard asks, how did you spend your week, and what is your most memorable moments so far in your practice? Oh, interesting, okay. I'll have to think about the second question there. It's tradition for Buddhist monks not to talk too much about their own practice, by and large. The Buddha actually gave us a rule saying that especially if we attain anything very special, it's a rule that we can't tell lay people. But in general, and so the culture in general is that we don't talk very much about our practice, except that monks will sometimes relate difficulties that they have in their practice, and those can be very memorable, sometimes the most memorable. And so I'll think about what perhaps to say in response to that question. But starting off with the first, how did you spend your week? Well, so the weeks here are all pretty much the same. And that can be good in many ways if there's some consistency in what's going on in the schedule and in the day-to-day activities and week-to-week activities. Then it's good for seeing how the mind changes. We can notice, well, the outside world isn't changing very much, and the program isn't changing very much here at the monastery. But my mind is changing, and it's a good thing to notice. That the mind is very changeable, and it changes on its own. One day we're in a good mood. One day we're in a bad mood, and if we stop and notice, we notice the moods, and we also notice that actually today is the same as yesterday. And so, why is it I'm in a different mood today than I wasn't yesterday? Of course, no 2 days are identical, of course, and so I don't mean to say that, but still, with the relative consistency from day to day here in the monastery and from week to week, we can see the changes in the mind and notice that the mind has a way of changing on its own. So the weekly schedule basically is that here at Empty Cloud Monastery is that we have teaching programs on the weekend, in the evenings on Saturdays, and in the afternoon on Sundays. We also have the live streams that we do Wednesday through Friday, and the Wednesday evening, Friday morning, and Friday evening are done in-house here. And The other 3 that are done each week are usually done by monastics off-site. So that's, and then the other 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, or excuse me, the other 2 days, Monday and Tuesday, we don't have any public teachings except for the 5 o'clock tea that we have on Mondays, and every other day of the week except for Tuesday. And it's a chance for some informal conversation, usually centered around Dhamma, and perhaps practical things around the monasteries. But then the day-to-day schedule also has a great deal of consistency across the week. We have morning group puja, so chanting and meditation, almost every morning, starting at 5:30 a.m. And then we have breakfast, and then another meditation session from 8 to 9. And then almost every morning from 8 to 9. And then chores and work from about 9 till 10:45 or 11. And the monastics and lay people all joining in, the lay people who are staying here as guests, I should say, overnight. And then the meal proceedings start at 11 o'clock, so food offerings, opportunities for lay people from the outside to come and offer food, or for the lay guests to cook food within the monastery. And the monks will give a short reflection oftentimes. Even if they don't give a reflection, there will be a blessing chant, traditionally known as an anumotana, rejoicing in the good deeds of others. And then the monastics and the lay people eat, and the afternoon is typically very quiet. After the dish cleanup and the kitchen cleanup after the meal, then from 1 to 5 we have noble silence, and it's a time for private practice and study. We have a nice library here at Empty Cloud Monastery with books on probably almost every denomination of Buddhism, and so a good opportunity to study. And we have 2 meditation halls at Empty Cloud, and of course each of the monastics and the lay guests has their own room. Usually the lay guests don't have to double up in rooms, so they can practice in the privacy of their room, or we can go practice walking meditation out in the yard or in the park adjacent to the monastery. Some lovely lawns and trees, and large Buddha images with gardens. And so we can practice sitting meditation out there, or walking meditation. Maybe do some qigong or yoga or something like this. And then, as I mentioned, the 5 o'clock tea with Dhamma discussion, and then evening puja from 6:30 to 7:30, so that's a little bit more chanting and group meditation. And then, as I mentioned, Wednesday evening and Friday evening we have the live streams. And yeah, and then that's it. And then lights out usually at 9 o'clock at night. And so that's the regular schedule. Very consistent. The majority of it very consistent from day to day and week to week. Slightly different on the weekends with the public teaching schedules. A memorable moment so far in your practice. Well, maybe I'll talk about one of the memorable moments that came very early in my Buddhist practice. I encountered Buddhism when I was in college. I took a class on philosophy and had philosophy, included some philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, I should say. And about a year after I graduated, I went to a monastery in California and was meditating at this monastery, and I was having a great deal of trouble with pain. Well, about the same amount of trouble that most people have with pain when they first start meditating. They're sitting cross-legged on the floor. This was very new to me, and we didn't use a lot of cushions like we do here at Empty Cloud Monastery. Unfortunately, we have a lot of cushions here and so on like this. But we were sitting on a thick pile carpet, and as I recall, we didn't have any other cushions, but we did have a thick pile carpet there in the meditation hall. But I noticed after 20 or 30 minutes sitting, I was in quite a bit of discomfort, and so I'd have to move and shift my position. And after I'd been there for a while, one of the monks mentioned to me and some of the other lay guests who were staying there, he said, you should learn how to meditate with discomfort and pain, and so that you can sit still longer. This will be conducive to developing more mindfulness and the mind becoming calmer. And so he he got us all together one late afternoon, and he said, "Okay, what I want you to do is," and we all thought this was a good idea. Actually, I was a little bit reluctant, I have to imagine, but I went also, and he said, "What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a clock here, and we're going to meditate for 30 minutes." And I want you to sit without moving at all. And he gave us some instruction about how to meditate with pain, being mindful of the pain if we start to experience it, or any other bodily discomfort, such as an itch or anything like this, stiffness, or if the legs fall asleep, for example. And he says that your main meditation object is the breath, but if you notice some discomfort, then be aware of the discomfort. Be mindfully aware of the discomfort, just as you would be of the breath. And you can even say, feeling, 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 kind of softly, internally to yourself, to help your mind stay with it. And just take it as a meditation object. And so we did that, and I was sitting very still, and trying to practice the way he instructed, and I was getting to be quite a bit of pain, and it seemed very difficult to stay perfectly still. And at one point, I noticed that I was starting to shake a little bit. Actually, that's how uncomfortable I was. But I was trying to stay with it very mindfully. And after a while, I was thinking, boy, this is so hard. This is so difficult. I'm really surprised how hard this is, just sitting still like this. And it seemed like the longest 30 minutes I'd ever sat in my whole life. And finally, he rang the bell, and I was so relieved, and started moving almost immediately. And then he admitted to us, well, I told you we sit for 30 minutes, but actually we sat for 50. And so he tricked us, but he got us to sit a lot longer than I would have expected I'd be able to sit without moving. And then the very next night, at the evening worship service with meditation, I tried to do the same technique. And I found I was able to sit for a lot longer, even longer than 50 minutes, in relative comfort, and using this mindfulness meditation technique that he taught us. And I was so surprised at how I was able to do it. I think I became more flexible by sitting for a longer period of time, and also I became more mentally, acclimated to it. It didn't seem like such a terrible thing after I'd done it even just once already. And I'd also developed some more mindfulness with this technique, and some skill in using it. And so right away I got very positive results. I know some other meditators have over the years as well, with these kinds of simple instructions and with some endurance. And so I'd like to offer that as a memorable experience in my practice, when it comes to mind now. Okay, so now we'll move on to another question. Put the glasses back on. I take off my glasses because of the glare shining off of them. I can notice that in the screen here. I'm putting them back on. See if I can scroll back up. All right. So, several more questions having come in. Yom Chu sends greetings as well. Moriah has a question. Is enlightenment possible without meditation? I have heard mixed things about this. Well, I have to admit, Mariah, that I can't actually say that I know whether it's possible without meditation or not. I think only a Samma Sambuddha could know that for sure. And I have to admit that that's based on my faith in Samma Sambuddhas. Because technically speaking, I don't know what a Samma Sambuddha knows and what he doesn't know, he or she. And but it seems that really you do have to meditate. That's what it seems to say in the scriptures. For example, if we look at the Noble Eightfold Path in the scriptures, it has the section or the components of the path rather that are about sila, that's self-control or morality, and that section which is or the components rather that comprise samadhi or concentration, and we have the components that comprise panya or wisdom. And if we look at the samadhi, it's right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And looking into those in the scriptures, they're what we would call meditation. and the Buddha talks quite a bit about meditation in the scriptures. And in fact, in one pithy quote, he says, a path without concentration is no path at all. And the masters, any of the masters I've learned from, and the teachings that I've read from various masters coming down through time, seem to indicate the same kind of thing. That really you have to meditate, and you have to put a lot of effort into meditation and try to grow in meditation over time. The basic idea is that meditation and samadhi is about drawing the mind all together. The word samadhi actually means something like unification or collectedness. A late Sangha Raja, that is the head of the Sangha of Thailand, not the current one, but the previous one, wrote a book in English. He could write in English, and he translated samadhi as mental collectedness, because it's about collecting the mind all together. And when the mind is collected all together, then the whole mind is experiencing at the same time the same thing. And in this way, as it's experiencing the way life really is, then it can make a profound personality change. That's one way you could look at attaining enlightenment, you know. And so it really seems that meditation is necessary to attain enlightenment. And if it may seem difficult, you know, and at times it is difficult, we can take heart knowing that, or at least having faith, at least in the beginning. But I think all meditators who stick with it over time will agree that whether it's difficult or whether it's easy, over time you grow. And I think we know from our own lives that sometimes it's the very hardest things that we do that help us to grow the most. And there's a benefit from growing. There are benefits of growing. And so in the long run, we'll be happy that we put the effort into it. And modern science tells us that even if we meditate just 20 minutes a day, over the long run, it'll be very good for us physically, for our physical health, for our emotional health, and also intellectually for us. We'll grow in our IQ and decision-making abilities and so on like this. And so I'd like to encourage you as much as possible to try to put some effort into it and see what kind of results you get. All right. And if we go to Kim, Kim has a question. How likely is it for a human to be reborn into the human realm? How likely is it for a human to be reborn into the human realm? Okay, great question, Kim. Very important question. It seems that the most important basic thing would be keeping the 5 precepts. That if we don't keep the 5 precepts, it's very likely we'll fall into the lower realms. The realms of hungry ghosts, or of animals, or of asuras, kind of like demons, or into the hell realms even. It says this in the Sutas, and the Buddha says that if we're fortunate enough to actually be reborn as human beings again, if we haven't kept the 5 precepts, there'll be serious defects in our lives. Have problems like a short lifespan, or rivalry in our lives, or if we have told lies in the past, then people won't believe us, and so on like this. And so this is in the Sutas. And again, it's something that I noticed the masters of Thailand uphold, that the five precepts are kind of the floor between us and the lower realms. And so they say you really want to keep the 5 precepts, take very good care of them. It seems that also there's additional morality that you really should keep as well. For example, always taking care to be polite to one's parents is very important. And actually it's your duty to look after them. According to the Sutas, and again, I ordained in Thailand back in 2014, and it's a common teaching there that really it's a duty of a child to take care of his parents, and it's very important to always be polite to them, because the karmic ramifications of being impolite to your parents, disrespectful, and not taking care of them are very bad. The karmic consequences, and can also cause you to fall into the lower realms. There are examples in the suttas other aspects of sila that can cause one to fall into the lower realms. For example, there are examples of those who were backbiters. Perhaps this could fall under the category of lying, which would be on the 5 precepts. But backbiters were reborn in the lower realms as ghosts, for example. And we see in the in additional sila in the Sutas, not just the 5 precepts, but the 10 courses of wholesome action, which include not just the abstention from lying, but also the abstention from divisive speech, from frivolous speech, and from harsh speech. And I can't think of examples now from the Sutas of, I wouldn't be surprised if there is some in there, about rebirth stories about beings who used harsh speech, for example, or frivolous speech. But I wonder if also the backbiter karma could fall under the category of divisive speech. That there are warnings in the sutras about not engaging in divisive speech, but to be one who speaks about unity and harmony. And so those are some additional considerations. So that's to keep us from falling into the lower realms. And how likely is it for a human to be reborn into the human realm? I can't give you an exact percentage or something like this, but that's what you do to keep from falling into the lower realms. And then if you look into the higher realms, into being reborn in the heaven realms, it seems that the recommendation in the suttas is to follow the Uposatha day. That is about 1 day a week to take the 8 precepts and give the day over to spiritual practice. And the Buddha taught this to his foremost female lay disciple, Lady Visakha. It's in the suttas. And in the Mulu Posita Sutta, M as in Mary, Ulu Posatha Sutta. And he says that, basically he says it's a condition from being reborn in the heavens. And so he recommended to Lady Visakha to follow this practice. So I can tell you that's what the suttas and the tradition says about how to not fall into the lower realms. So the sutta says about going into the higher realms, and it seems the masters also promoted this sort of thing, keeping extra precepts and giving time for meditation, and so perhaps we can take from that about here how to steer a course for at least being reborn as human again or going even higher. All right. Perhaps I could, if there are more specific questions about keeping precepts and about the karmic ramifications, perhaps I can provide more information if you like. All right. John has a question. We are approaching age when man and machine could increasingly mix, creating bionic humans. What makes a being human in this tradition? Could a human with a bionic brain of brain or heart attain the jhana? Okay, so it sounds like 2 questions there. What makes a being human in this tradition? And second is, could a human with a bionic brain of brain or heart attain the jhanas? I'm not 100% sure I understand the second question, but I'll take a crack at it. So we say in this tradition, the tradition of this monastery is that it's early Buddhist text tradition. And I have to admit that I'm not much of an early Buddhist texts student. I've read some of the Pali Suttas and in translation. And I think the general leaning of the monastery is kind of Theravadan. If you look at Bhante Sudaso, for example, he ordained in a Theravadan monastery, and he's practiced, if I understand correctly, mainly in Theravadan monasteries, and it seems to be my sense of this monastery as well. And I ordained in Thailand, as I said, in 2014, a Theravadan country, and trained as a Theravadan monk, and so I can offer perhaps an answer from a Theravadan point of view. What makes a being human in this tradition? And by Theravadan standards, it would quite simply be having a human body, as distinguished from an animal body, okay, or the body of a deva, that is, a heavenly being, or the body of a ghost, of a demon, or I'm using demon as a translation of the word asura, and a hell being. And so, if we talk about creating bionic humans, I don't know at what point, how bionic you can be before you no longer are classified as human by Theravada standards. And this isn't something that comes up in the scriptures, as I think we all would have assumed anyway. That isn't something we find in the scriptures. But so I think it would have to do with what kind of a body you're born with, and then if you make alterations with it, then simply you're still considered human. So we answer that way, and the meditation masters in Thailand would say, well, the body is important because there's value to having a human body. The human body is very capable compared to the bodies of many other kinds of living beings, such as ghosts or animals, for example. Not as good as having the body of a Dewa, but still very good compared to most living beings living in, for example, who live in the animal realms or the ghost realms or something like this. And so we're very fortunate to have the human body, but what's actually much more important is whether or not we have the heart of a human being. And this actually goes back to the question Kim asked about, and the answer I gave to it about being reborn as humans, and whether or not you're by Thai standards, they actually have this saying that being a true human is someone who follows the 5 precepts. And they say that whether or not you have the body of a human being and are actually classified, strictly speaking, as a human, what's more important is the level of the heart. Okay, because this determines how much suffering and pleasure you'll have in life, and also determines your rebirth. And how you're reborn after a human birth can have tremendous ramifications for the long term. So if you may have the body of a human being, but inside you may have the heart, the mind of a Dewa, which would be truly wonderful, very joyful, relatively peaceful, and intent on doing good things, such as being generous or keeping precepts, meditating, and stuff like this. Or you might have the heart of a ghost, suffering, and not really drawing close to anything like Dhamma and goodness. Or you might have the heart of a hell being, really suffering intensely due to bad karma that you've done. Or you might have the heart of an animal. And while there are many things that are not so blameworthy in the animal realm, there also, if we look at how often do they have the intentions to keep precepts, such as not killing, and so on like this, and is how much of an intention there is to draw themselves up higher, such as keeping precepts and meditating and so on like this. And then if you die with a heart like this, how are you likely to be reborn? As I said, this has tremendous ramifications, because if you go into the higher realms, there's a great possibility, or at least being reborn as human again, to keep going higher. If you fall into the lower realms, there seems to be this tendency of going lower. And it says in the Sutas that if you're reborn in the lower realms, then it can take a very long time to come up again. It can be very, very hard. And so that's really where the focus is what level is the heart on. And can a human with a bionic brain or heart attain the jhanas? I think that's how to read it. Can a human with a bionic brain or heart attain the jhanas? And if you say a brain or physical heart, so the physical brain or the physical heart, I would say my personal feeling is 100% yes, they could still attain the jhanas, because whether or not you attain the jhanas is dependent on the mind. And the mind is different from the physical body, including the physical brain and the physical heart. According to the Sutas, the rupa khandha, or the aggregate of materiality, is composed of earth, water, air, and fire. And these are matter in its three phases: solid, liquid, and gas. And energy, which is the fire element. And then the consciousness is in a separate khandha of the 5 khandhas, the 5 ways of classifying physical and mental phenomena, or sankharas, you could say, to be more specific. And the heart, so the heart is in a separate category from the physical body, and whether or not you can attain jhana depends on your mind, on your spiritual heart, you could say. All right. We have hello from Jayanta, and Anjali from Carol. Mary Burns has logged in. Good evening. And Mariah has a question. Are any of the stages of enlightenment possible without meditation? Oh, I'm sorry. I've answered this already. I must have skipped ahead accidentally. Okay, so I've already answered that one. If we go on to John, I am a person with few possessions and funds. What should be my scope of giving? Could forgiveness and gratitude be a useful scope in the face of criticism and adversity? Okay. Really good questions. And questions I think probably everyone can benefit from, hopefully if I have good answers. So a person with few possessions and funds, what should be my scope of giving? So I don't have an exact number to give you, but you want to give within your means, while thinking that you do want to definitely still practice generosity. That's my feeling. It seems to be the teaching of the masters, and seems to be what I see from the Sutas. And there are a couple of reasons for this. One thing is that being generous feels good. And you'll see benefits from it right here in the here and now, from doing so. It'll help to build and strengthen relationships, for example, and it will show other people that you're a good person, and so it'll burnish your reputation, in a good way and in an honest way, as long as you're honest about giving. And so these are all benefits that you'll see right here and now, starting with the good feeling. It also has spiritual benefits. The generosity is a parami, according to the Theravadan tradition, meaning it's usually translated as perfection, but I like the term spiritual virtue to kind of clarify a little bit personally. And this is something that strengthens the mind, and it enables you to, as you grow in generosity, to let go more and more, and to make sacrifices. And our material welfare depends on having made acts of generosity. They say in Thailand, you've probably all heard me mention this before, they say in Thailand that if you have food to eat, it's because you made acts of generosity in the past. And so I recommend, even if you're giving in small amounts, to practice giving, and try to capitalize on it by giving well. It says in the Sutas that you want to give clean things that are useful to the people or whoever you're giving them to, and give clean things, give things that are useful and well chosen, and you want to set up your mind properly for giving. So when you're giving, don't do it in an offhand or absent-minded way, but do it in a deliberate, intentional way. And it says in the Sutas that in preparing to give, you want to be joyful. And when you're actually making the act of generosity, then you want to calm the mind on giving. Okay. And then after giving, you want to be elated. And so if you practice in this way, you develop the mind in giving, and you also maximize the benefit of the giving. And it says in the Suttas that the highest mindset or intention behind giving is to think that by making this act of generosity, I am making my mind more noble and more beautiful. Okay. And so you can imagine that in practicing this way, even if you're giving in small amounts, you're really going to get a lot out of it. And but you do want to pay attention to not giving beyond your means. And so you kind of have those two perspectives on it. Give within your means, but try to give well. And that way it'll still be a very powerful spiritual practice for you. As well as helping you to build wealth. They say that it's not because of giving that we don't have wealth, but because of failing to give. And so By giving and giving well now, you'll be developing the conditions for having material wealth in the future. Now, could forgiveness and gratitude be a useful scope in the face of criticism and adversity? Yes. Yes, forgiveness can be a way of practicing generosity in kind of a spiritual sense, that, and it can help us to let go so that we are even-minded and kind of clear-headed about things that have happened. If we've received unfair criticism or people have treated us badly, if we can let go enough to forgive and through forgiving become more clear-headed and more balanced in mind about it, then we can be more skillful in how we react to it as well. And it's a true generosity of spirit to be forgiving, to see how can I forgive this person, and contemplate how to forgive this person or these group of people, or whoever's doing something that seems unfair to us. I should mention that there's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation, and also a difference between those things and forgiving and forgetting. I remember one Buddhist teacher, something that I had thought of as well. We have this phrase in America, forgive and forget, and which means really forgive and don't hold it against me. I think, but also some people may take it as actually forgetting about it, forgetting that it ever happened. And one teacher was saying, I'm not really sure you should forget. Forgetting would be an absence of mindfulness. And you can forgive, but remember, and you do want to be wise. Remember things that happen, and notice over time if there are patterns and trends. It doesn't mean to be hard-hearted or hold a grudge, because you do want to genuinely forgive. And reconciling means that necessarily working things out to continue being friends or partners or whatever it may be. And that can be very useful in many circumstances. But even if you can't do that, or if it doesn't seem relevant in the situation, you can still forgive and be generous in your forgiving. Even if you do decide eventually that you need to be separated from other people, or these are people who aren't suitable partners or companions for you. So these are various considerations on the topic of forgiveness to bear in mind, I think. And gratitude in the face of criticism and adversity, to remember what even our greatest enemies have done for us. We can be grateful to them. And if we remember in hard times all the things we have to be grateful for, it can help us to raise our own spirits, and to look at how actually maybe things aren't as bad as they initially seem to us, And so these are some considerations. I think forgiveness and gratitude are good qualities to always bear in mind. One teacher said, if we realized how much we owe to really all other living beings, and all the things they've done for us throughout the long round of rebirths, then we'd all be vying with each other to repay the good deeds that have been done for us already. And so we can remember that if we have faith in this kind of an idea, that even if we don't know what we have to be grateful for from someone else, we can think, well, this being has probably done something really good for me in the past, even if I'm not aware of it. And this can help us to let go and be forgiving as well. All right. Good luck, John. Great questions. All right. Question from Yong Chu. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. I apologize if I'm not. Bhante, what would be your top 3 suttas? I would like to read them. Okay, my top 3 suttas. Wow. There's so many great suttas, but top 3, I'm not sure that they're at my absolute top, but thinking off the top of my head, 3 that come to mind initially. One is the Kalama Sutta. It's in the Anguttara Nikaya. So I'll type that in here. Maybe I should have done that with the Muluposita Sutta. I mentioned the Muluposita Sutta before, and I really like that sutta, so I'll type it in. And since I mentioned it before, maybe I will mention 4 right now. So I mentioned the Muluposita Sutta, then the Kalama Sutta. And both of these will be easy to find online on accesstoinsight.org. Probably on Sutta Central as well. sutascentral.net, and I'll type that in at the end as well. So Mulaposita Sutta, Kalama Sutta, and two more to name. How about the Karaniya Metta Sutta? Such a wonderful sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness. They say that it's perhaps the most loved sutta on the island of Sri Lanka, and that so many, maybe most, Sinhalese Buddhists can recite it in Pali. Mulaposita Sutta, Kalama Sutta, the Karaniya Metta Sutta. And how about another one? Another one that says, how about the Mahamangala Sutta? The sutta about the 32 highest blessings. And it's a wonderful sort of guide to life, both for lay people and for monastics. And it's in the Sutta Nipata, as is the Karaniya Metta Sutta. These also can be found on Access to Insight or Sutta Central. While I'm at it, why don't I mention a few more? There's another one. This is, how about the Samanya Pala Sutta? A beautiful sutta, very long, about morality and meditation, especially, but also a little bit about wisdom and attaining enlightenment. The Buddha talks in great detail about the jhanas, giving some beautiful metaphors about attaining the jhanas. The morality section is very long. I think just the beginning and middle sections on morality are really most relevant to most people. There's a very long section, very detailed on minor points of morality that probably most people wouldn't find very interesting. But for serious students, you may find that interesting to look at. And how about the Chula Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, a sort of tour de force sutta on meditation from the Buddha about. So the Samanyapala is kind of if you read the Samanyapala and then read the Chula Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, I think it's a good pair. Because the Chula Dhatu Vibhanga kind of picks up where the Samanyapala leaves off, in some sense, talking more about wisdom aspects of things. The Samanyapala is in the Digha Nikaya. This Chula Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta is in the Majjhima Nikaya, as I said. And probably all of these can be found in, as I said, in Access to Insight or on Sutta Central. I'm going to send this up so everyone can see these. All right. So that's a variety. I ended up naming several. I also love the Dhammapada and recommend that to anyone. I started reading that when I was, so I'll type that in too. I started reading that when I was new to Buddhism and found it so inspiring. And I started memorizing it in English, so I memorized several verses in English. And it's not a sutta, but it's a collection of verses, as I said, I believe it's over 400 verses. It's also in the Sutta Nipata, and there are many translations of it. It's also one of the most loved of all sections of Buddhist scriptures. So I'll type that in as well. All right, hopefully that'll show up. All right, Gregory sends in Anjali's and Amin as well. And then we have another question from John. I wonder how we're doing on time. We're doing okay. John says, someone seems to have judged me in a negative way because I eat fast food and don't drive. How to overcome the disdain of others related to assessment of my inferiority? Okay. It's interesting. Yeah, it's okay, good question, John. Let's see. How to overcome the disdain of others. When you say overcome, I'm taking that, I'm not sure what you mean, but I'll take that as meaning, how do you be at peace with it internally? I guess another way of looking at it might be, how do you change their minds? And maybe if you do want me to speak to that, maybe I can come up with an answer for that also. You can type that in, and maybe if we have more time, I can answer that. But in terms of how to be at peace with it internally, I think one thing is having, I always recommend having a regular meditation practice. Keeping precepts, having a practice of generosity, kind of a full and well-rounded spiritual practice, and meditating, as I said. So I think that these things help us to have an internal kind of anchor, or an anchor. There's actually a metaphor in one of the suttas I just mentioned, the Chula Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, talking about something else, but the same metaphor can be used, I think. Have an anchor within you so that the tides don't sweep you away. And this reminds me in turn of another Buddhist metaphor, the 8 worldly winds. And 2 of those winds are the winds of praise and blame. And if we can remember that that the winds, the reason that I think that they use this metaphor in the sutras, the reason the Buddha uses this metaphor, is that that these kinds of things are like the wind. They're always changing, And you wouldn't set, your life based on the wind, in the sense of, you don't want to be dependent on the wind. I guess if you're sailing, you have to be, but you have to always be changing how you're sailing based on the wind direction. But still, we can see the point of this metaphor, that the winds are always changing, and you can't make your happiness and your internal peace of mind and your sense of integrity and self-esteem based on ever-changing winds. You want to base them on something that's going to be longer lasting, it's more reliable, more dependable. You don't want to be moved by the winds from your course in life. And I think as I was saying, having a well-rounded spiritual practice helps us in a way to have an anchor in us, have a foundation in us. And it helps us to remain calm in the face of adversity. Someone asked about adversity and criticism, and remain calm in the face of people disdaining us and condescending to us. In the present moment, to not be shaken so much by it. And also, because we actually have a practice along the lines of things that are truly good and truly important in life, then we can reflect on this, actually. And it's, in fact, a formal meditation practice in the Theravadan Buddhist tradition, one that the Buddha taught in the scriptures to his foremost female lay disciple, Lady Visakha. And he taught her the recollection of her sila, and I could broaden that actually, as he teaches also in another place the recollection of generosity, and you can broaden on these themes to recollect our practice of meditation as well, and other good things we do, such as worship, but recollecting in general these good things that we do. And so we can even, when we're sitting in meditation, in formal meditation practice, remember these things. And this is uplifting to the heart, and this builds our own self-esteem. And it reminds us of what's really important in life, and that these kinds of criticisms, exactly what kind of food we eat, or whether or not we drive, are really frivolous. They're not, even if somebody condescends to us, it's not to be taken seriously. And we do have, we have reason to feel good about ourselves, because we really do things that are genuinely good and really will pay off for us in the long run. And for those of us who have faith in future lives, if we think about the really long term, what kinds of effect will these petty things, like what kind of food we eat exactly, or whether or not we drive, have, when in fact what's really important is these kinds of things, like the spiritual practices that we have. So those are some ideas. Hopefully you find some use in those. All right. And if you have questions about how to practice those recollections I was talking about, recollection of our generosity and our sila, meditation and so on like this, it's quite a simple practice, but very profound and very beneficial, and I can speak to that as well if you'd like. Okay. If you'd like, just type it in. You may have heard me talk about it in the past, and I've actually done, I think, a little bit in guided meditations up on the YouTube site as well, along those lines. Okay, Norma has another question. Do you give credit, besides the Dhamma, to astrological planetary movements and archetypes for behavioral changes, or at least influence potential life changes and events? Okay, good question, Norma. I think it's the kind of question a lot of people will be interested in. You're asking, do I give credit? And I have to say, I really don't know. I really don't know. But I do believe that our karma overrides these kinds of things, if they do have any impact on us. It's an interesting thing for me to say right now in the moment, thinking that in the past, years ago, I would have thought that I have to admit, I would have thought that such ideas about it, like such as astrology, were quite laughable. I have to admit. My opinion has changed over the years because I've heard that some meditation masters, including one that I very highly respect, does give credit to things like astrology, and I don't have an understanding of it. I haven't studied it, and I haven't questioned him about it, and so I can't really speak to it. There isn't really any discussion of it, as far as I know, in the Sutas, except saying that it seems, if I recall any information from the Sutas about it, is that the karma is a really important thing, and so we really try to focus on that. Okay, so maybe that's what I can say to that, Norma. All right. I hope hopefully there's something useful in there what I've said. Okay. And okay, Richard, responding to my my question, or excuse me, my answer rather. Sherry sending in metta and a peace sign. Wonderful. And Jeff has a question. Following from last week, when you mentioned circumambulation as a practice. Last month we visited Wat Po, the reclining Buddha. Oh, I think that must be in Thailand. Well, how about that? Okay. Okay. And then he says the anti-clockwise direction of movement there is different from what I've seen in YouTube videos with people keeping the temple or statue on their right. What are your thoughts about the direction? Well, that's interesting, yeah. Because I've always, the teaching I'd always heard and what I'd always seen done in various monasteries I stayed at was going in clockwise direction, keeping the, just as you say, keeping the sacred object, in this, usually a Buddha image, on the right. And so I've never heard of anyone doing it the other way, clockwise with the Buddha image on the left, and I don't know why they're doing it that way. Of course, this idea of keeping the Buddha image on your right is a convention. We find it in the Sutas, not about Buddha images, but keeping someone that you respect on your right as you pass around them. And as far as I know, it just simply is a convention dating back to that time, the time of the Buddha, that's a way of showing respect. And so, as far as I can see, as long as you have a respectful mindset, that's really the most important thing. Your respectful mindset, if you're intending to pay to worship, that's the important thing. And so maybe it'd be worth, if you're interested, asking them why they do this in the anti-clockwise direction. Okay. Okay, and then Brian saying, thank you for your generosity. Could you explain a bit more about the Buddhist personality types and how to determine where we might fit in the scheme? Okay, sure, Brian. Yes. So Buddhist personality types. I believe that this all comes from the commentaries. I don't recall seeing anything about this in the Sutas, but it comes in the commentaries, which were written about 1,000 years after the Buddha passed away, written down in Sri Lanka. So about 500 AD, or some would say CE, in Sri Lanka, and the commentaries are reportedly based on much earlier commentarial traditions dating back centuries that we no longer have access to. They're lost, basically. According to the traditional story, they were destroyed, and so the commentary is written in 500 CE in Sri Lanka, or what we have to work for from a commentarial point of view, and later some commentaries as well. And so usually you hear the personality types talked about in terms of greed, aversion, and delusion. Greed, aversion, and delusion, the three roots of unskillful action. And these three roots do come from the Sutas. Greed is a general category associated with liking and wanting, various forms of this. And aversion is various forms of not liking or disliking. So fear, anxiety, anger, hatred, is a broad range. And then delusion, which is not really knowing in line with present reality in a very broad sense. So we might be engaged in speculation, for example, or be absent-minded, daydreaming, things like this. Not being present in the moment with kind of mindfully aware. This would be delusion. And so, according to tradition, they say that people have kind of a basic personality type along these one or more of these three lines. They have a tendency to be experiencing delusion and or greed or aversion, and knowing where you fit actually into the scheme can help you with knowing to help you be aware of what kind of reactions you tend to have to things, or how you tend to think about things, and kind of get onto yourself, if you will. Recognize this about yourself and perhaps compensate, or perhaps even help you with determining what kind of meditation to practice also. As meditation techniques can help with displacing certain moods and defilements, and are suited to different personality types. Now, the commentaries also have the flip side of these three. So they have, faith types, intelligence types, and speculative types. That's right. Was the type. So these are the opposite of, you might say, of greed, aversion, and delusion. Faith, intelligence, or speculation. I use the term opposites, but maybe I should say kind of the complementary sides. So saying that kind of a very positive aspect of greed could be faith. They have faith very easily in things. And of aversion is intelligence. Seem to be very critical. They have a good critical faculty, being able to see, discern between things. And those who have a tendency towards delusion may, on the positive side, be good at kind of imagination and speculation. So being able to think speculatively about things that help with problem solving, for example. Perhaps like thinking about theoretical physics or something. You're not really being present in the moment so much, but theoretical problem solving, this kind of thing. I'm not sure if that's very clear, but in this, I think different people have different levels of faith in this scheme of how to categorize in this positive way. From the point of view of though, in terms of trying to find a good meditation object, for example, or getting onto yourself with regard to kind of what kind of defilements you typically have, you can see, well, what kinds of reactions do I normally have towards things? And I think one thing that most people don't really realize is that there's a tendency for the defilement to come before our thinking and our judgments, even in a very subconscious way. So we might walk into a room. An example I've used a few times recently, so it comes to mind easily, is might walk into a room and think, well, this carpeting is ugly, and the pictures they have on the walls don't really, they don't really fit in with the general decor of the room, and they really need more lighting in here. These kinds of things. And if you may notice that all these kinds of things are kind of critical. They're kind of negative aspects. Whereas another person might come in and they may think, actually this carpeting is really nice, and by choosing the pictures that they put on the wall, they're adding some variety and a different feel to it than might normally go with this kind of decor. And the lighting actually makes it all come together very well. And so you see how different people can walk into the same room and have a different reaction to everything. And to them, it just seems like that's the way it is. And they may think that they have, both people think that they're just having a clear and direct idea of what's really going on, the way the situation really is. But meditators, might say, actually, the way the way you're looking at things is biased by this fundamental liking or disliking, this greed or aversion. And then if we see it at a higher level, kind of a grosser level, you might say, not a higher level, but a grosser level, if we tend to be kind of grumpy or in a bad mood, react negatively to things, so on like this, or if we react positively, we always seem to see the good in people, and we seem to be, or tend to like a lot of things, and so on like this, and that would be more on the greed side. And then, so someone who has a greed personality might practice something like Asubha meditation a little bit more frequently, contemplation of the unbeautiful aspects of things, to help balance out this the wanting. They may more often feel wanting for things than someone who has an aversive type personality, and they might benefit from practicing more loving kindness to kind of balance out the aversion. And over time, gradually see their reactions to things becoming more balanced and so on, and a greater ability to be mindful in the present moment as well. Delusion types, they say that, for example, another way of looking at things, another kind of metaphor to use is that the old idea of, is the glass half full or half empty? For a long time, there's been this metaphor. If you see half a glass of water as being half full, then you're an optimist. If you see it as being half empty, then you're a pessimist. This, of course, is assuming that you want a glass of water for some reason. Maybe you're thirsty, and this is a premise that nobody ever mentions. And so you might say a greed type might say that the glass is half full, I think, and an aversion type might say that the glass is half empty. But a delusion type might have a really hard time figuring out how to answer. And they may benefit from breath meditation. I have a tendency to be kind of indecisive and thinking a lot and overthinking things, I think. And breath meditation can be good for this, kind of calming and coming into the present moment a little bit more. It can be very grounding, body type contemplation like this. And I think someone who's very very mindful in the present moment might say, well, the glass is both half full and half empty, and that's just the way it is. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful, Brian. And go on to Greg, responding. Thanks for the encouragement on meditation. Sure, you're welcome. It is hard to make time with work and family. Of course, it is, yes. And so... yes, it's important to make it a priority, though, and I think that you'll find that if you do take time for it, if you make time for it, even just 20 minutes a day, that it will, as I mentioned before, have wonderful benefits for you in the long run, and these benefits will help you with those other aspects of your life. And so I think you'll find is even just 20 minutes is 20 minutes very well spent. And from what I've read, you can even, according to modern science, if you split it up into 2 sessions of 10 minutes per day, that this is as beneficial as one session of 20 minutes. And so this can help you to fit it in. And you may see ways to make those other aspects of your life less demanding. You find that you're more efficient and effective in every aspect of your life. And that the time spent meditating was very well worth it. Okay. Good luck to you. Mark, could someone type in the name of the sutta for being born in the heavenly realms? Thanks. Okay, I think that's the sutta I referenced before probably is what you're mentioning here. The Mulu Posita Sutta. I'll write it in one more time. I wrote it in that longer list of suttas that I provided earlier. But I'll write it in one more time. Mulu Posita Sutta. And I'll write in the name of those two websites also that I mentioned, just in case there are people who aren't familiar with them. Access to insight.org or sutacentral.net. Okay. And that's the Muloposita Sutta is a sutta about putting one day aside each week for spiritual practice, and that it's a condition for being reborn in the heavenly realms. And I hope you enjoy it, Mark. Find it helpful. And Sud sends in an Anjali. Hello, Sud. Good to see you. Logging in. And Jody. Dear Bhante, how does one cultivate joy in meditation? Oh, good question. Okay, right. Let's see how to answer. Okay. I think two ways that I like to recommend are practicing some loving kindness meditation and practicing recollection of good things that we've done. The loving kindness meditation is quite a popular meditation. It's very often taught in the United States and in the West and in Asian Buddhist countries as well. And you can find some guided meditations online for doing that. And if you have any questions about practicing loving kindness meditation, don't hesitate to type them in. Recollection of the good things we've done, it's as I mentioned before, you can recollect generosity, your acts of generosity, and your keeping of precepts, or whatever principles you live by along moral lines, the things that you think are really good, and your recollection of doing other good things like meditation and worship and chanting, or studying suttas or listening to Dhamma talks and things like this, and doing this in kind of a in a focused way. As part of your meditation practice, thinking for a little while about things you've done recently along these lines, and noticing that these are good things that you've done can be very uplifting to the heart and make you happy. Those are two ways that I recommend. I think also having a broader spiritual practice, like practicing generosity and doing acts of service and so on, not only is good for providing a basis for this kind of recollection, but in general brings joy to the heart as well. I think it can also be very helpful to be part of a sangha, and especially one that you can go to in person, as this can be very supportive and feel very good. Not only to be practicing with other people, but also just in terms of making friends and having good spiritual relationships. So I can recommend that as well. All right. Then Joe, hello Joseph. I hope you are well. And you say, you're asking, Venerable Sir, how can one skillfully transform a tendency towards punitive actions, like reacting harshly to perceived wrongdoings, such as, how do you like it, into responses set in compassion and patience? Okay, wonderful question, yes. So somebody does something to you that you perceive as being harsh, or they treat you badly, and it's quite natural for us to think, maybe I should do the same thing back to them and see how they like it, maybe it'll teach them a lesson, and we might even justify it in that way. If I do the same thing back to them or something else that makes them feel bad, maybe this will teach them a lesson, maybe this is good for them. So this is quite natural, but we really have to be very careful here, because if it's coming from a place of anger or revenge or something like that, then we're talking about bad karma, and so it's going to come back to us many times over in a bad way, and so it'll just be more suffering for us, it might have the effect of making them reconsider their actions, and it might teach them a lesson, but this is highly uncertain. It's surprising how often this can backfire, and then it just escalates things and things get worse. And so we can reflect on this. If you're listening to me talk about it now, you can reflect on this, and this can be a way for to sink into the heart a bit. And then if we have restraint and we make a determination, even if somebody does something bad to me, I'm not going to respond in kind. And we recollect that the Buddha taught in this way in the Sutas. And he told his disciples, at least one group of them, even if someone saws off each of your limbs, they take a saw and saw off each one of your limbs. If you react in anger, or if you give rise to anger, then you're not truly my disciple. It's a very high standard. And I don't think we need to feel bad if we can't live up to that standard, because it's quite natural to get angry. But if we can remember that, remember the ideals that the Buddha set forth for us, and think, how wonderful it would be to be the kind of person who wouldn't experience the suffering of anger in response to wrongdoing at this level. This can be very inspiring to us. And we can think, well, at least now what I can do is I can at least make the determination to not respond in anger and do my best to restrain myself. This is one step along that path. And then remember that the Buddha went on to say that what we should do is we should begin practicing loving kindness meditation. And so we can make that determination, and we can try practicing some loving kindness meditation now, even before that happens. And practice loving kindness meditation on a regular basis. And over time, this will help the heart to change. So it's less and less likely to respond with anger, or if it does give rise to anger, that it won't be as powerful, or we'll have a greater chance of being able to have some self-restraint. And then we can contemplate the flip side. I talked about the disadvantages of responding in anger. For example, the anger itself is suffering, and that it can lead us to do bad karma. But we can contemplate. And it's good to contemplate from time to time. Set aside time to contemplate, perhaps as part of our meditation practice, especially after having made the heart calm a little bit. Contemplate, the benefits of compassion and patience. That these are roots of skillful action. And so if we have compassion, if we have patience, then we're much more likely to do skillful things. And that doing skillful things is good karma that's going to come back to us many times over. So yes, I was talking earlier about the 5 precepts. If we break the 5 precepts, if we go against the 10 courses of unwholesome action, then it could even lead to a very bad rebirth for us. But if we do skillful things, like if we can be forgiving of people, if we keep our precepts, if we can even practice generosity, and so on like this, if we practice loving kindness meditation, if we grow in wisdom through contemplation, then this will come back to us so much, and could even lead us to a higher rebirth, even to rebirth in the heavens. And so contemplating these kinds of things slowly over time, it sinks deeper and deeper into the heart, and the personality of the heart changes. And in the beginning, it may mean gritting our teeth, It may mean gritting our teeth and turning around and walking away, and this kind of thing. But over time, it'll get even easier and easier as long as we stick with it. Good luck, Joe. Great question. All right, getting some positive responses and gratitude for the responses. Glad to hear people are finding them helpful. We have a question from Rick. One of one. I'll have to scroll down and find 2. Okay, I see it down there. Rick's question. I have many years of practice in bringing mindfulness meditation into all times of the day. And if I can scroll down here. Ajahn, can you talk about the size of the sphere of awareness? Under what circumstances is it skillful to, I see ... You wrote 2 of 2, Rick, but it seems like maybe you've got a third one. There should be a third one. Okay, now we've got 3 of 3. And 4 of 4. Okay, so this is actually a 4-part question. Okay, so I'll back up now that I've located the different pieces of the question, Rick. So number one, I have many years of practice in bringing mindfulness meditation into all times of the day. Ajahn, can you talk about the size of the sphere of awareness? Under what circumstances is it skillful to focus primarily on the body, focus on the few feet around us, focus on the space of the entire room, or focus all the way to the horizon? I find that my sphere of awareness gets smaller when more impaired by chronic illness or pain. Okay, very interesting question, yeah. Okay. The thing about pain, I seem to be quite uncomfortable sitting. You may notice me adjusting my posture quite a bit. I'm going to adjust a little bit more here. And so sorry for jumping around a bit. If I were mindful of the discomfort in my body, I could sit with it better, but I'm trying to focus on answering the questions, and so it's I need to be mindful of the questions and so on. This is actually related to your question that, in a way, about the sphere of awareness, because you, well, okay, let's see. Try to see what we want to try to be mindful of is really the primary thing that we need to be paying attention to. Okay, so for example, in this circumstance, I'm feeling discomfort in my body from sitting for a while, and such is the nature of the body, that it will feel uncomfortable after a while, and it can actually feel uncomfortable all the time. But now, for me, the priority is paying attention to answering the questions. And so I'm really trying to focus my mindfulness on that, not be distracted by my bodily discomfort. And I think that's kind of, that's the way to approach this. Instead of thinking about, how wide a sphere of awareness should I have? How many different objects should I take in and at what distance and so on like this? From a spatial point of view, rather think about it in terms of what's important for me to pay attention to now, what's skillful for me to pay attention to now, and be mindful of that. Okay. Yeah, because yeah, and so I'm not sure if I should get into a long explanation of this. I actually don't really see a reason to, let's see here, in general, to expand and try to expand and contract your sphere of awareness, unless perhaps your one thing just I suddenly remembered is that at times when I've had issues with drowsiness, then it can be helpful to kind of expand my field of awareness. Instead of being aware of something like the breath, for example, something that's relatively calming and subtle and so on like this, I might start paying attention to things that are outside of me and even moving my awareness around. So paying attention to a sound and then to a sight, for example. Maybe get up and do some walking meditation at the same time and notice the feeling of the ground under my feet, this kind of thing. And then if there are a lot of different objects and I find my mind's gotten scattered, for example, or restless, then might try to say, okay, what I want to do is really try to focus on something calming, and then I might come back to something like the breath. So that's one kind of a situation where I guess you might want to try moving the awareness around. But in fact, I don't think that necessarily speaking that means expanding the awareness in terms of space. Ideally, with your mindfulness, if your mindfulness is really good, what you want to do is you still want to keep it just within the confines of the body. So even if you are seeing a sight, you keep the mind within the body while you're being very mindful of what you're seeing. If you're hearing something, keeping the mind within the body. And so it might make contact with the sound right at the ear, right at the ears, and you hear it right there without the mind going outside of the body, out to the sense object. But that's once your mindfulness is very good, and maybe yours is, Rick. You say you've been practicing for many years. And so that might be something else for you to consider practicing with. Just meeting the sense object right there at the sense door. And just being with it there, just with this sense object as it is. At the bare minimum of the experience of just a sense object. But prioritizing being mindful of that which is skillful and important to be mindful of. Okay. All right. Hope that's helpful, Rick. Don't hesitate to send a follow-up question. We may run out of time this evening, but don't hesitate to send a follow-up question if I haven't fully addressed the question. All right. Then Mahendra saying something interesting here. I don't know about religion. Love is too much stronger. Okay. Maybe messages will also help you all recognize yourself. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Mahendra, but you're saying some interesting things. Saying that love is too much stronger. You don't know about religion, and I can really appreciate those comments. It reminds me of something the Dalai Lama said, which I think is related. He said that his religion is compassion. And I think when we think about love, there are different kinds of love. And from a Buddhist point of view, loving kindness is perhaps the highest kind of love. And in Buddhism, one aspiration within Buddhism is to develop a heart of loving kindness towards all living beings, loving ourselves and all living beings equally, and to also practice that loving kindness with wisdom, to develop our wisdom, knowing what is truly good and what is detrimental, what leads to the pleasure and happiness of ourselves, for ourselves and other living beings. And what leads to the detriment and harm, and trying to navigate a course towards happiness and pleasure. And in fact, we may find that a real meaning and purpose in life, bringing happiness to ourselves and to others, and reducing suffering for ourselves and for others. I think for some that could be a religion, right there. All right. Best wishes to you, Mahendra. Appreciate your comments. All right, Rick. Okay. So Rick, three-part question here. I ordered 6 medications to care for my chronic illnesses. After over 2 weeks, the pharmacy still hasn't gotten all 6 filled correctly. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I practiced offering patience, tolerance, kindness, and compassion. I was more at peace, but they took advantage of my kindness. As I became more assertive, the sense of self got stronger due to feeling that my medical needs were not being met. Okay. Ajahn, can you offer guidance on this type of practice? Yes, okay. Okay, very interesting question. And this is, I think, a kind of question that many of us have, or many of us, a kind of problem that many of us encounter over time. We show other people our patience and tolerance, kindness and compassion, and then they think, well, okay, well, this. I don't really have to do what this person wants me to, because they'll just go on being patient, or they'll just go on being nice to me, And so often in life, it's the squeaky wheel that gets oiled, as they say, right? That is the squeaky wheel that gets oiled. I even saw something not long ago, a doctor saying that that the ethos within modern medicine, this is what he said, and I can't vouch for it, but so now I feel like backing off a little bit. And starting to say it, I feel like maybe I'm saying something that isn't quite, I can't vouch for it myself, so I'm going to back off. Asserting my mindfulness to be careful about what I'm saying. But I think many of us have found that if we're not assertive enough in asking for what we really need and trying to get what we really need, that we go unheard, or people don't respond to us in a way that we really need. And so I think that it's important to differentiate between being patient and tolerant, kind and compassionate, and being assertive and clear at one point in my life, actually, as a monk, a much more senior monk told me that really I had to be more assertive in communicating with others about my medical needs, actually. So this is now reminding me of a similar situation from my own life. And I started doing that. And I kept my patience practice, and I maintained my loving kindness practice, and but I still was very straightforward and frequently stated exactly what I needed as it was, and pointing out to people when they weren't following through on things that they said that they would provide for me, and so on like this. Basically, I kept after them, but without ill will, and I didn't say anything harsh, I was very diplomatic about it and so on like this, but I maintained my assertiveness, and it was very helpful. And so I learned through practice about this as well, that just because you have loving kindness and you're being patient and so on like this, you're remaining peaceful inside, trying to remain peaceful inside. You're not allowing defilements to arise or to dictate your actions. It doesn't mean that you have to remain silent about what you need. Okay. And I think from this you can probably see the difference that I'm talking about. Okay. Now you also can reflect, I think another whole aspect of this, that's one aspect of this. Another aspect of this is that you can reflect that the active cultivation within yourself of patience, tolerance, kindness, compassion, these kinds of skillful qualities is good karma. And so even if you're not getting the kinds of medical stuff that you need, medical care, the medicines you need, you are at the same time developing good karma. And this will come back to you in spades, as we say, it comes back to you many times over compared to what you put into it. And so that can also help you to feel more comfortable about this if you reflect on that. It can be frustrating to not get what you need and to feel like you're being taken advantage of and you're not being taken seriously. But if you reflect, well, still, you've done a lot of good karma. And that's going to come back to you very well if you have faith in that. And that can make you feel better about it. So I hope this is helpful, Rick. Okay. And good luck with your health conditions and your practice. Okay, Brian found the answers helpful. It's good, okay. I'm glad I could help Brian. And then, oops, I scrolled down too far. I skipped some, I think. Okay. And then Jody saying thank you. Okay, you're welcome, Jody. Very good. Joseph saying thank you for the reminder of the simile of the saw. The Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha are so kind, aren't they? Yes, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We owe it all to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, the triple gem. And then Mark asking, what is your name, Bhante, that you use? Okay, so yes, my name is my formal name. By the standards of the Thai Sangha, I ordained in Thailand, is Wade Buripanyo. The Wade is the my first name from lay life. According to Thai convention, you use your first name from lay life as your first name in monastic life also. And Buripanyo is the Pali name that I was given on ordination. Again, it's Pali. It comes from the language of the scriptures we use in the Theravada school of Buddhism, Pali. And so Wade Buripanyo. And so in Thailand, I would be called Tan or Kruba. These are words typically used for monks. I have more than 10, I have 10 wasa now. I'm completing my 11th wasa presently, actually. So in a month and a half or so, I'll officially have 11 wasa, as they say in Thailand, pansa, but 11 wasa, according to the Pali. That's the 11 rains residences. And so once you have 10 in the lineage of Ajahn Mun and Ajahn Chah, as I do, as I ordained in, then they would call me Ajahn. So they call me, in Thailand, they'd call me Ajahn Wade Buripanyo, Ajahn Wade Buripanyo. Outside of the Ajahn Mun and Ajahn Chah lineage, they would call monks Ajahn earlier than that, oftentimes. Here at Empty Cloud Monastery, I'm going by Bhante, Bhante Wade, because Bhante seems to be the convention here for at least some of the male monastics. And so I'm doing that according to the convention here at the monastery. So I'm going by Bhante Wade here. And Rick, no apologies necessary about the questions and how you wrote them. No apologies necessary. Good luck again with your health problems. Sharing some merit with you. Hopefully that will help. And Nikhil has a question. Wandami, is perception and its conception makes any experience? Okay. Now, Nikhil, I'm not sure I understand all of the terms you're using. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by conception, but I can try to answer the best of my ability. When we talk about perception, there are two kinds of perception in the Theravadan tradition, dating back to the scriptures. There's one scripture, I wish I could remember the name of it. I can't remember it, but the name of it. But the Venerable Mahakachana is explaining basically Paticca Samuppada and the links of dependent origination. And getting to the section between sense contact and feeling, it's actually vedana in Pali. It's usually translated as feeling into English. If you look it up in the dictionary, there's a possibility for other translations. But he says that he put one formulation, he puts perception before feeling, and then another he puts it after feeling. And basically the idea is that that when we have sense contact, then perception formulates, how we experience it. Exactly how we experience the sense object. So our perception kind of makes our sensory experience for us out of the sensory data. And then once we have the sensory experience, then there are other perceptual activity has us thinking about it and forming opinions about it, and so on like that. So to give you an example, say we meet somebody and they make a facial expression. We might experience that facial expression as a smile, or we might experience it as a sneer. Just two possible examples. This happens. If two different people see the same person making the same facial expression, one might see it as a sneer, experience it as a sneer, and the other might experience it as a smile. And we ourselves might have experienced it either way, depending on our current mood, for example, or our understanding of that person, how we generally perceive that person at that point. Okay. And so this experience of the facial expression is one example of perception. And then having experienced that facial expression as either a smile or a sneer, then we might have further perceptions of that expression and their meaning and their personality and the person over time, immediately and progressively over time, based on that, all stemming from that sensory experience we had. So these are two kinds of perception, and they play an enormously important role. The perception plays an enormously important role, as you can imagine, in how we experience life and how we react to it. And it really it pervades how we experience life, and actually our experience of suffering and pleasure in life could generally be boiled down to problems with perception, in that actually awakening in enlightenment is about perceiving life accurately. And so it's a topic worth paying attention to. To clarify our perception, we want to practice, we want to keep precepts and practice meditation. We can practice meditation that's suitable for our personality type, as I was talking about earlier. So, for example, if we have a tendency towards aversion, we can practice loving kindness meditation, and this will help to balance out our perceptions. If we have a tendency towards delusion, like not really kind of being present in the present reality very much, we can practice breath meditation. It's going to be very good for that. If we can practice, if we practice a Subha meditation, or a reflection on the unbeautiful aspects of things to counteract greed and liking, this can change the personality of the heart over time. And also simply the practice of being mindful in the present moment with the present reality can clarify our perception, so we start perceiving things more clearly. But meditation is an art, and so we usually need to have some skill at various meditation methods as circumstances dictate. All right. Good luck, Nikhil. Don't hesitate to send follow-up questions as well. Now, let's see. We're going over time. I wonder how many more questions we have. Oh, just one more question. This looks like it'll be the last question of the evening. And the question is, good evening, Ajahn. I asked you about pain in the knee during meditation last week. Okay, I think I remember that, yes. And the pain hasn't really returned for me to put into practice what you advised. Oh, I was so excited to practice it. Okay, not actually a question, but a comment. You're so excited to practice it. Well, that's wonderful to hear, actually, that you're not aversive now to the idea of meditating in pain, and that actually you're interested in taking it on. You're inspired to take it on as part of your meditation practice, and that's so wonderful to hear. Because it's a wonderful approach, not just to pain, but to life in general, and to the suffering in life. That if we can approach suffering that way, that it's more fodder for our practice, then we can turn all of the suffering we experience in life into a catalyst for awakening. And so, sadhu anumodana for your outlook on this, and best wishes for your practice. I look forward to hearing if you do have a good experience with it, or what kind of experience you do have with it. All right. So, good luck again, Kristen, and Rick, sending in sadhus. Good luck to you, and to Nikhil, and to everyone. Best wishes in your practice. May you continue to prosper in the Dhamma. If we like, we can all put our hands together and anumodana, that is, rejoice in everyone's practice by saying 3 times sadhu in unison. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. For those of you who aren't aware, sadhu is a way in the Theravadan tradition of saying well done, well done, well done. And so we're celebrating the practice that we all do. It is a form of good karma to celebrate good things that other people do. So it's good karma we all made in that way as well. You're very welcome, Gregory, and everyone. And so this weekend we have our in-person, the live teachings here at the monastery, as I mentioned, Saturday evening from 6 to 7:30. It's Sunday from 1 to 4. Sunday is a relatively social day as well, especially in the morning. We have volunteer opportunities starting at usually going from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Don't hesitate to stop by if you'd like to do some volunteer work at the monastery. And then at 11 o'clock we have the meal proceedings, so anyone who wants to come and make offerings. There'll be a relatively large group on Sundays especially, but every day is possible if you arrive by 10:30 with any food offerings you'd like to make. And then 11 o'clock the meal proceedings start, and then complete with a blessing and usually a Dhamma reflection. And then from 1 to 4, the meditation and Dhamma talk program. And then any evening except Tuesdays, we have tea from starting at 5 o'clock, so you can come for Dhamma discussion as well. And then the live streams start again next Wednesday. And may you all be well. Until next time. Good night, everyone. Goodbye.